On this episode of the show, I have with me Anish Agarwal. He is CEO and founder at Traversal, and we're going to be talking about leading in the age of AI. Well, Anish has a background that's kind of going to be interesting moving forward within the AI space. That's having that PhD to research to CEO path, and we're going to ask him about that, about how he handles that leadership component, making that leap with the PhD, and does a PhD become table stakes if you're looking to lead an AI first company? A bunch of questions in there, but Anish, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Amir.
Absolutely. All right, before we start, tell us what you guys do over there at Traversal.
So Traversal, we are building an AI site reliability engineer. So what that means is all of the work that happens once software is put into production to keep it reliable and up, and dealing with incidents, dealing with alerts, general thinking about long-term system reliability. That's what we do at Traversal. And that's the job of an SRE, and that's what we're trying to help augment and give a superpower to SREs all around.
There you go. That is a big problem to solve. All right, this episode we're going to be talking about, obviously, I don't get into a lot of backgrounds, but in your case, we actually do want to tie your background into the episode. So I won't go in through your whole LinkedIn bio. People can look that up. But you did go through, obviously, bachelor's, master's, PhD at MIT, and obviously the research path. I guess at some point, when you are going from that PhD and you're in research, I guess the thought is you could stay in research. I mean, you could go, out into the business world and, become an employee. You did take that path to a certain extent, but more importantly, you decided to, I guess, become a CEO, become a founder. I guess if you could kind of walk us through a little bit of, that path and our understanding, that'd be a great starting point.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I didn't go into this thing expecting or even wanting to run a company or be a CEO. I was a researcher at heart. I loved it. And when I finished my PhD and was moving to New York to become a professor at Columbia, I thought that was good. Like that was kind of end game for me. It was just as I was making the transition was when this once in a generation thing happened, which was ChatGPT came out, and it was just this moment in time where it felt like everything around us had changed almost overnight, and that it just became clear to me that a lot of the major developments in AI are not going to be happening in companies. Sorry, not in universities as much as they're going to happen in companies, and you have to be in both, even if you want to be a good researcher. And so I wanted to be at the forefront of what AI research is going to look like, and felt creating a company with research in its DNA, taking on a very technical problem, is the right way to do that, is the right expression of where the best in class AI work is going to happen. And it's also where some of the best AI researchers are going to be and AI practitioners are going to be. And so that was really my motivation for starting the company. As time has gone on, I've really enjoyed, and I'm still very much growing into the role, but I'm enjoying learning what it means to be a CEO of a company and lead a company, especially a very technical company such as ours. So it's been a lot of fun, and I wake up every day looking forward to the day, which is a privilege.
Absolutely. I guess you made the leap. I mean, you did do some work for some other companies, but obviously in non-leadership roles. To make that leap from, I've done my PhD, I really enjoy being a researcher, and obviously you didn't set out to be a founder CEO. When you do make that leap, and all of a sudden now you're thrusted into a position where you own a lot of decisions as the CEO. I'm sure you have founders that you guys talk, but you're there to run the company as well. I guess, what do you lean to? I mean, what was it? Was there anything in your research days? Was there anything in the PhD program? Was it a trial by fire, just stop in the deep end and just sink or swim? I mean, how did you kind of, lean into that management leadership when you didn't have, like, quote unquote official titles as a leader?
So I think a few things. One is, I think, especially in early stage company building, in the CEO role, you have to be able to fluently move between technology and markets and think of how these two things fit together, kind of this journey towards product market fit. And that's something I really enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed the technical research part of it, but I also really enjoyed companies. That I was a management consultant at BCG, and a big part of that was understanding how companies functioned, how they grew, how they didn't work, right? And I think so. There's kind of two parts of my brain that were coming together, and I felt this particular role exploited both of them in a very unique way. So that was really good, actually. And then second, I think a lot of your role as a leader is storytelling, right? And telling, packaging and packaging this complex thing that you're trying to build and do into clean stories that people can grab onto and motivate themselves to leave very high paying jobs. There's a lot of people who left incredibly high paying jobs to be here because they bought into the mission of what we're trying to achieve, right? And I think that comes from really good storytelling. And I think in the various roles I've had in life, whether as a researcher, as a professor, professing to students, every day, or being a management consultant, a lot of it is storytelling. And so I think that came quite naturally to me and has helped me a lot. And then I think there's just an intrinsic thing of just being an authentic person and people liking your story and people wanting you to win. And I think that's a big part of what being a CEO of an early stage startup is people taking a bet on you and people wanting you to win. And I think that just comes from being authentic about who you are and what you're good at and what you're not good at. And I think that's helped me. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I guess, you mentioned you really enjoyed, the research side of your career at some point. Taking on the CEO role, do you do anything to kind of, retain some of that research? I mean, obviously you have an affinity to it. Is it something that you try to pull in, or as a CEO, you just don't have time? You gotta sometimes just give that up.
Yeah, I have fantastic group of engineers and researchers here at the company and my co-founders. So I mostly trust them. We have a pretty fun way of we have a Slack channel where people are posting papers and try to keep up with what's going on. We have lectures at the company where people are talking about stuff that's happening. It's pretty cool. I mean, sometimes there'll be people at the company who will do something, and then 2 or 3 days later, there'll be a paper published from a top university about what we're doing. So, it's been cool that way where people will present their work within the company, and my job is really to listen and figure out how to package that, right, into a way that is consumable for our customers as we recruit, as we fundraise. And so I've kind of become almost like a marketer where I'm trying to take in this like deep technical knowledge and figure out the right packaging so that people that are not as technical or maybe not as specialized in what we're doing can understand it. I think I actually enjoy that role arguably more than just pure research. Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess the business itself, the decision to go look to solve a problem, I'm always interested because how a founder decides on solving a particular problem, that it's not always one way or one particular thing. But when it comes to Traversal and what you had done, that kind of was like, what I think building AI SRE agents for the enterprise is the business we want to build. When did that idea come about? When did you realize, okay, this is something I might need to look into?
Yeah, when we started this general space of observability, SRE, I knew nothing about it when we started this company about 2 years ago, and 2 years and 6 days ago is when we started this company. And we started the company actually without an idea, but a clear sense of the type of problem we were looking for to solve. So something at the intersection of our research, which was in a field called causal machine learning. So the idea being that correlation isn't causation. We've all heard this. So my research was about how do you get AI systems to pick up cause and effect relationships from data, and also reinforcement learning, which is how do you search large spaces effectively. And we're trying to see how do those things fit with agentic systems, right? And this is like 2 years ago, before AI agents were cool or even a thing, but I think we had a pretty clear sense that this is going to become a thing. And so we're seeing, well, how do these things fit? And went through a few different ideas. My co-founder, who's from Citadel Securities, he's the one who really got us in this problem. He had, as you can imagine, uptime is really important. Like Citadel wants to be a very reliable company. And as we looked into it, it kind of felt like the perfect problem, right? Because when you have an incident, an outage, you have these complex network software systems. And so when one thing breaks, everything breaks. It feels like this epidemic, right, that is percolating through everything. And so to figure out which of the things that looks anomalous is the root cause versus just a spurious correlation, it's exactly what our research was about. And it's petabytes of data that you search through. You're like searching for this needle in a haystack with fake needles everywhere. And that's exactly what all of our research was about. And it's petabytes of data. So you need an agentic system to search through it, right? You need an LLM to reason through it. And a lot of the data is like logs and code, which is what the LLMs are really good at understanding. So everything really fit in terms of the generational wave of tech and what we thought we'd be very good at. And this general space observability is evergreen. So however software looks like, it always needs to be made reliable. And people pay a lot of money to make it reliable. I think it's the second largest software spend after your cloud spend typically. And it's produced some of the biggest winners in software of any software category, right? It's the most $5 billion plus liquid outcomes of any software category. So the TAM is big. It produces repeated winners. The why now is very clear in terms of technological unlock. And then with all this software written code that's coming out, there's just more code being written. There's more surface area for things to break. And the amount of context that people have is dropping, right? That engineers have, because more of the code is not being written by them. And so that becomes another very compelling tailwind that we are relying on, right? Is that if AI is writing your code, it has to fix it too. And right now it's only writing the code, and it's our job at Traversal to help fix it and make it reliable. So all of those things made it very compelling for us in terms of both the market that exists and how big it's going to be, and the technological unlock that's been created by us in our research, and also just the societal wave of technology.
I love that. You touched on something really interesting there. I just wanted to maybe go back. When you decided you wanted to start a company, obviously you mentioned you didn't have the idea at hand. Talk to us a little bit about that. And the reason I'm asking is sometimes you hear people that are like, I want to start a business, I just haven't found the right idea. And sometimes it's like, well, not always. Sometimes you have to make the decision and then you land. But obviously, it's not a one size fits all. But when you made that decision, I mean, how long were you going to give yourself before you landed on an idea? Or was it a case of, you know what, we're going to find something. We just need to be in it to win it type of thing.
I think the way I put it is that me and my co-founders, we really enjoyed spending time together. And, we got ourselves a WeWork that we paid out of our pockets and just sat there every day and be like, let's just think through things and think through what we have an unfair advantage at, right? And I think the thing that kept us going was that every day, even though from the outside it may not look like you're making progress, for us, every day felt like a very logical next step from the previous day. So it felt very fluent as we kind of went through this idea maze of figuring out where we want to go. It felt like every day we were moving in like a very steady clip in a very logical way, in a way that was harmonious across all of us. I think that's what sustained us, right? And we're like, okay, if this is the pace at which we get through things and get through ideas, we'll land on something. Like there's no way we won't. And so I think that's really what kept us going, was the pace of learning.
Absolutely. I like that a lot. I guess a question I was going to ask you, and I mean, I am seeing a lot of people with research backgrounds, obviously PhDs, moving into founder roles in AI. It makes complete sense. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, it seems like if I'm building AI first, understanding a bit about how the cake's made, how the sausage is made, is going to help. When you start thinking about your background and what you guys are doing, and maybe just the future of AI for startups, is the PhD, I mean, is it as big of an advantage? I mean, I'm on the outside, I don't have one, I'm going to ask you, but is it that big of an advantage? Is it really a differentiator for building an AI first company like what you've done?
I think I'm someone who doesn't really care about their degrees and all that kind of stuff. I think it's more the training that you get from research that matters. Like you could throw away the PhD and it would have zero effect. I think what's really interesting about this time and this generation of startups is that the core infrastructure we rely on is changing all the time, which is like the models themselves, right? And the architecture is just changing really rapidly. And it's like having your core cloud. It's like AWS changes every 6 months, and it's also random. It's a stochastic parrot, right? So imagine you're in that world, being able to read papers, understand where the state of the art is going to be 6 months from now is really important, right? As you build these systems, these architectures. And I think learning how to deal with that level of uncertainty and still make progress and make bets about where things will be is something you're taught a lot, especially in like top tier PhD programs. You're taught that a lot. So I think that's very helpful versus like a specific skill set. It's more that way of surfing this sea of uncertainty is really important. And then also with AI in particular, a lot of it, as you think about these models, and a lot of it comes down to evaluation and benchmarking and careful data science. And I think, if you had to write a NeurIPS paper, an ICML paper, that's what you're doing half the time is you're benchmarking carefully, right? Understanding how do your results fit with the existing literature, and carefully, is your model actually better? And as I think this idea of how do you do evals well is a big problem in AI right now. And I think that's like a fundamental skill set, again, that you learn as a PhD. And so I think those are things that tend to really help, are almost like existential skill sets that you need to have when creating a company, like an AI native company. And I think, especially as talking as a founder, I think good storytelling, as I said earlier, is really important. And a lot of good research comes down to good storytelling, because you have to convince people that this line of research you're doing is really valuable. You have to convince grad students to further that line of research, right, that you started before. And so I think you have to raise funds, right, for grants. You have to recruit PhD students. You have to give talks to your colleagues. And so some of that fundamental skill set around how do you explain these really technical ideas to different audiences and get buy-in from them. There's another skill that actually I think people don't think about as much, or maybe underappreciate about the academic and PhD experience that turns out to be very useful in this world.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. I guess if you were looking at, and you are getting some unique experience and exposure going through that program, so that's without a doubt, everything you said made sense. If you were looking at that, and a lot of times you see, and this is maybe not a founder question, but when PhDs are being hired, you always see a debate about how their research experience gets applied. I could definitely see if it's more, closely, the job is more closely aligned to the research. I could definitely see that. I think what you just, talked to us about, I think some of that's missed because people don't understand what happens in the program. I guess if you're talking to people, let's say, that are in PhDs and do want to get that first job out of school, there's definitely intangibles that you just articulated that can be carried to any job. I mean, what kind of advice do you have for that group of people that aren't necessarily wanting to be founders, but maybe they're like, hey, I need to paint the right picture of my experience so people kind of see that it's not quote unquote experience at company XYZ, but it's still relevant.
I think, especially in this age of AI, it's really about rate of learning, because everything is changing all the time anyway. So what you knew even a year ago is getting deprecated pretty quickly, right? So I think the thing I would show and market is like, how quickly did you take a new field, if you're a grad student, that you didn't know before, and in a year you were able to write a paper that got published, right? And how you organize the learning of that field, how did you organize concepts, and how did you innovate what the state of the art, beyond what the state of the art was. And telling that story really well, I think, is more important than like any specific skill set, because anything you learn is going to get deprecated anyways. Right. So that's what I would talk about, and showing that you were able to do that in a very technical field, in a field that was reasonably crowded, and you were able to still show and innovate, I think is the way I would, if I was looking to hire someone, that's what I would be looking for. And then grit. I think a PhD is a long period of time. It's 5 years, and you need to deal with extremely delayed gratification. And I think that's another thing that I would look for, is like, what is their grit? Because dealing with these models, dealing with just the level of uncertainty as to when it works, how it works, that is something that I look for as well. So it depends on who you are trying to get hired by, but that's something I would look for, at least. And I think the big labs, I think that's pretty similar. Yeah.
Absolutely. I like that. That's good advice. I guess maybe, final question as you are now 2 years into the CEO role, if you could look back at the beginning and now kind of reflecting on it, are there things you could have done if obviously you didn't know you want to be a founder, so we'll caveat that. But now that you can look hindsight, are there skills that you wish you could have maybe worked on? I mean, maybe developed prior, or I mean, it could also be a case there you do have to learn on the job, but just kind of curious.
I think the two skill sets that help, one is that I wish I was better at when I started, and increasingly so, I think, is when you're an early stage startup, you're in, especially in a space that is fast moving and competitive, you you will never feel ready for the next stage, right? Whether it's fundraising, whether it's hiring a large go-to-market team, whatever it might be. And I think you have to be able to have the courage to think, not the courage, also the discipline to think about everything you're doing as a series of bets. And if you have inaction, that itself is a bet. Even if you're doing nothing, that is a bet you're making about the future. And I think viewing things that way is really crucial, and how you decide when and when not to do things. I think the other skill set that's really important in this role is recruiting really well. I think the company is as good as the people, and I think being able to paint a compelling picture and convince people to go on a journey with you is really, really important. Something I really enjoy, and I believe in it. This is not like I'm convincing anyone to do anything that I don't think I would not do myself, right? So I think that really helps. And I think also, I think making sure that, again, there's something you're lucky about, right? Which is taking on a problem that you think you actually can fall in love with and that will sustain you for, decades is important, right? So I think the problem we're in is rich enough that it'll keep giving. We'll always find, it'll always get more complicated. There's always a way to make it more complicated and add more value. And so I think a problem that you feel fits with like a large mission that you can really get into and other people can buy into is really important, I think. So some of those things I think I got lucky in and I just got. But if I had to go back, that's something that I would process and think about. And large markets, I think large TAM is important. If you don't have a large TAM, you're done, right? And so making sure that you see a big, ambitious picture of what can be, how the world can look like.
Absolutely. I love it. Anish, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for joining. If somebody does have a follow-up question, obviously you covered a lot of ground for us, but what is a good way of connecting and asking?
Yeah, just shoot me an email, Anish, Anish, at traversal.com. And then I'll be happy to answer them.
Absolutely. Definitely appreciate your time. Thank you for being on and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, Anish did a great job. Obviously, he's leading an AI-first company. He talked to us a little bit about the transition from PhD to research to CEO, what it was like to kind of dive in and become a first-time founder, even though he wasn't looking to be a founder, and landing on the right problem and working with a co-founder that he trusts and felt very comfortable with. Also talked to us a little bit about having that PhD, what it means and how it translates into his role and potentially how others can position that when they are looking to be hired. So share this with somebody else who could benefit from hearing it. I'd really appreciate that. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.